Oh, man. The football gods giveth, and they taketh away. SEC Insider Hit this morning, brought to you by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. New location in Gluckstadt to go along with their locations in downtown Jackson, Tupelo, and Atlanta. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Show is also presented by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center, New Surgery Center and Clinic, Lakeland Drive, Flowood, and that's MississippiSportsMedicine.com. We welcome in our friend Brad Eberts, College Game Day on ESPN Radio. He joins us on the Coors Light guest line. You're listening to 105.9 The Zone ESPN. Mississippi State is upset Ole Miss with the big win on the road. So I want to start with the Lane Train and Ole Miss in their 42-41 win over Kentucky in overtime. Matt Corral looks good. They had three big receivers on Saturday that had huge games. Corral also led them in rushing. Brad, what was your takeaway from – well, first of all, it's really difficult to lose a game when you rush for over 400 yards, but Kentucky pulled it off. But what was your takeaway on Ole Miss and Kentucky?
Yeah, I mean, football's different now. You can win a big game rushing for only 9 yards, and you can lose a game rushing for over 400. I tell you what, for Ole Miss, it's just a great win. Just when you consider where they've been for the last few years, you're just looking for something positive to build on early and a new coach's tenure, and to go on the road. And I realize, it's not the typical SEC road game because of the crowd situation. But still, to go there and do that against a good team. I mean, Kentucky, they've done enough in the last few years for that to be a legitimately good win. I mean, it's not as good as many other wins in the SEC would be, but it's still something to be proud of, especially like I said, with all Ole Miss has been through lately. So it's a good start, and like you said, the offense has looked really good. And I think when you hire Lane Kiffin, you figure you're going to be good on offense. You knew he had a lot to work with. You wondered how long was it going to take, and right out of the gate, I mean, they have looked sharp. So I think they got to be really happy with that. And you mentioned Matt Corral. He actually leads the nation in total QBR. Not just because he's thrown the ball really well, but like you said, the rushing on top of it. And we had just become so enamored with Plumlee last year, who is obviously a better runner. I mean, he's an elite runner at quarterback, but I think we kind of lost sight of how good of an athlete Corral is too. He's not quite at Plumlee's level, but for a quarterback, he's a really good runner. And I think he's shown that in both games so far, but especially 2 days ago. So that to me is just another sign of how much fun it's going to be to watch Ole Miss this year, because obviously their defense still has a long way to go, and so you're going to have a lot of points scored in Ole Miss. I tell you what, if you're Vegas, I don't know if they've put out these numbers yet, but when you start thinking about a total, an over under for Ole Miss games, I mean, what do you do? I mean, they're going to score on Alabama this week. But they're going to give up a ton. So, it's the games. I tell you, it's too bad they can't sell full stadiums worth of tickets, because the fans be getting their money's worth.
Brad, you visited with us throughout the offseason about Lane's ability as a play caller to get the ball to his playmakers, and we know Elijah Moore's good. Mingo was highly recruited, and he's really coming of age. But, I mean, they get a kid by the name of Kenny Yeboah who's a transfer, hadn't been there long. And Lane finds a way to plug him in. And the last 2 weeks, I mean, he's already making big plays and emerged as one of their top playmakers, which goes to what you told us about, how good Lane is at doing that, regardless of who it is.
Yeah, I mean, you just go back to the first year that he was calling plays for Alabama. You had Blake Sims at quarterback, and I don't want to shortchange Blake Sims because he had a great year, but he was recruited as a running back out of high school. He obviously had played quarterback in high school, but they didn't really see him as a quarterback when he came to college. And so you could make the argument he's got a running back playing QB. He's got Amari Cooper at wide receiver. But Alabama didn't have the depth at receiver that they have now. It's not like the last couple of years where they had 4 guys, and now they've got at least 3, you'd have to say, after this past Saturday. But then it was just Amari Cooper, and you're like, what are you going to do for a passing game when you got one guy, everyone knows you're trying to get him the ball, and you've got a converted running back trying to throw it to him, and they set pretty much every school record there was for a single season throwing it. Because even though everyone knew Cooper was going to get the ball, Lane still found a way, to create mismatches where and just scheming to get him lined up on someone he knew he could beat and to get him the ball. And it was amazing. It really was. And then for him to just, go from that to just Derrick Henry ground and pound the next year. And then, from that to, okay, then he's going to run the quarterback with Jalen Hurts as a freshman the year after that. So, I mean, whatever it is he needs to do, he's going to find a way to maximize the talent on his roster. And he obviously has a quarterback who's got, good dual threat ability, and he's got some receivers who are dangerous. And I think we know he's got some running backs too when he needs to use them. So sure. Like I said, it's going to be fun to watch and see what he can do with these guys.
Here's my takeaway on Matt Corral. We're visiting with Brad Edwards, College Game Day on ESPN Radio, and he joins us on the Miller Lite guest line. Matt Corral is accurate and elusive, and with Lane and some of those pieces, that's dangerous, Brad.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's all about having the right coach, to put the guy in a position to succeed and to maximize, his talents. Because end of last season, I think people were questioning, is he going to transfer? Because it looked like, okay, this is Plumlee's team now. They found something with Plumlee, and obviously at the end of the Egg Bowl, he had to come in and kind of save them there and give them a chance. But up to that point, it had just become Plumlee's offense. And so I think the coaching change was obviously huge for him. And if that doesn't happen, if Lane doesn't come in, what becomes of his career? I don't know. Does he stick around? I mean, I can't say for sure because I have no idea, what he was thinking or what kind of discussions were going on. But you just don't know. It's about getting the guy in the right offense. And I mean, Joe Burrow a year ago was a great example of that.
No doubt.
Bringing in Joe Brady, and all of a sudden you got someone who sees, okay, here's what Joe Burrow does really well. We're going to do more of that. And they got it done. And I think, I'm not certainly not putting him or anybody in Joe Burrow's category right now, but it's the same type of thing is what we're seeing.
Yeah. So you got Matt Corral, Mac Jones, and Kyle Trask playing the best ball at the most important position in the league the first 2 weeks. Now, Mac Jones may be great, but he's also got receivers sometimes that are running 4 and 5 and 6 yards open away from whoever's covering them. But those three are the biggest producers of the first 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. And now from an efficiency standpoint, Stetson Bennett is right there with them. But if you actually look at the plays being made and the yards per play and all that stuff, it's the three guys you mentioned are the ones who are really lighting up defenses. The Mac Jones thing is just a head scratcher. I have no idea what A&M is thinking, playing Alabama the way they did. I mean, yeah, sure, they have a really powerful offensive line and they have a good running back in Najee Harris, but he's not a home run threat. He's not a guy who's gonna take the ball and just go 70 yards on you for a touchdown. He's not gonna outrun a lot of people. And so why they just consistently put all these guys to the line of scrimmage and left their DBs vulnerable, I have no idea. I would imagine Mac's not going to see a whole lot more of that strategy the rest of the year. But if there's one thing he's shown, I mean, look, maybe it's like maybe there are a lot of teams that felt like, well, without Tua, passing game won't be the same. Well, he's shown this much. If you leave receivers open, he's going to hit them. So we'll see how everyone adjusts. Not just to him, but what adjustments will be made to all these guys as the season goes on. I mean, Kyle Trask is the one who is the most experienced out of that group, and he'll see better defenses than he's faced so far. But I think for all these guys, this is part of this grind. The 10 straight games against SEC opponents is that you got some very accomplished and well-paid coordinators in this league who every week of tape you give them, is an opportunity to try something different that might confuse these guys who up to this point have faced very little resistance.
Brad Edwards, College Game Day on ESPN Radio on the Coors Light guest line. All right, so with Ole Miss Bama, I think we will pass on that. We recap their win. Mississippi State falls to a bad Arkansas team, and their defense only gave up 14 points. So what was your takeaway? And by the way, Barry Odom has owned Mike Leach 3 times at Missouri, now at Arkansas. Bartu has him as a really good defensive coordinator, but still they shouldn't, go in as a 17-point dog and win. Where did that land with you, Brad?
I mean, I was shocked by it. And one of the reasons is because, when going back and looking at what Stetson Bennett did when he came on for Georgia in the Arkansas game, he hit guys who were open. He basically, took what the defense gave him. But most of those guys were wide open. And it was just porous defense by Arkansas. And you're thinking, okay, if they can't cover Georgia's receivers, and a lot of those cases weren't more than 15 yards downfield, what are they going to do when Mississippi State starts flooding the field with receivers on every play? And obviously they held in there pretty well. I think sometimes we don't make enough of track records between play callers and defensive coordinators, because the previous week, as much as we talked about things like, personnel losses for LSU, which obviously were a huge deal going into that season opener, we didn't talk much about the fact that Bo Pelini had squared off with Mike Leach a few times when they were in the Big 12 together, and Pelini had not done that well. So some of these things I think we may need to take a closer look at, especially with a guy like Mike Leach, who's been around for so long, and he's going to come across guys who he's faced before. And maybe we should pay more attention to that. But look, I think if you had looked at his track record, especially at Washington State, you would have seen that he had a few really good wins where they surprised some teams, and then he also had some head-scratching losses. And I wasn't expecting it to be this one. I figured they'd get upset at some point, but I didn't think that it would be Arkansas, and I certainly didn't think that they would lose a game where they allowed as few points as they did. So, it's still early, and everyone's going to make some adjustments along the way. But I think to a lot of people, what you saw last Saturday is what they were afraid that Mississippi State might be in year one with Leach before he had all of his own guys in there. And I think that if the results of the games had been in the opposite order, nobody would have thought too much of it.
Right.
But to do that on the heels of the LSU performance is what was just jarring to so many of us who watch college football.
Brad Edwards with ESPN on the Out of Bounds show. Blake?
Yeah, Brad, I want to build off what you just mentioned. So you said people will make adjustments throughout the season. Well, for all the incredible talk about what Mike Leach's offense can be, the big knock against him is his inability or lack of desire to adjust. Not just game to game, but like year to year. And Washington's defensive coordinator has talked about that before when he played Washington State. He said, we know what we're going to get from Mike Leach every year. It makes it easy to defend. So is when you match up a Mike Leach offense, like you said, against a Barry Odom or a Bo Pelini, I mean, is there something to be said about these guys there's the lack of adjustment from Mike Leach will finally catch up to him in the SEC, where guys kind of have more talent to play different styles of defense. Like more defenses in the league can match what Odom did, as opposed to having to play man-to-man like LSU tried to do.
Yeah, and look, I go back to his years at Texas Tech when he first became a head coach, and he's torching everyone in the Big 12, almost everyone. When he played Texas and Oklahoma, he didn't have nearly as much success because those were the only teams in that league that had more than two cornerbacks who were talented, that they could get out there on the field. And this is back when, Oklahoma and Texas actually played defense, for those who are old enough to remember that. And so that was, I think that was a little bit indicative of what you should get in the SEC. Now, that said, he'll be able to recruit better offensive skill to Mississippi State than he ever was able to at Washington State and Texas Tech. So he's going to have good players to throw to as well. But the fact that Washington was able to consistently hold down his offense year after year after year the way that they did, it just makes you wonder, is he going to be forced to make some sort of adjustment in the SEC? Because I guess I would go as far as to say I think there are probably at least 9 or 10 teams in the SEC that have Washington level talent on defense. Arkansas is not one of them, by the way, not right now. And so, of course, LSU is, but LSU just chose to play them the wrong way. So we'll see. I think if Leach had an offense that nobody ever stopped, and when they did stop, it was just a fluke because of turnovers or whatever, then I think he would be well served to just keep doing what you're doing. Don't ever worry about adjusting. No one can stop it, so just keep doing it. But considering that's not the case, it just makes you wonder, is his whole goal that, I don't know, 75% of the teams on the schedule can't stop it, so we're just gonna do it over and over. And sure, there's certain games that we're not gonna be able to win that way, but we're gonna win enough that it's gonna keep everybody happy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that's the mentality, because no coach likes to lose.
Sure.
But at the same time, yeah, the Washington thing really was a head scratcher to me. Just the way that it was just over and over and over, and it was so utterly predictable.
Brad Edwards on the Out of Bounds show. All right, so that was a huge disappointment within the league for MSU. And then I guess Auburn was the other team that their fan base walked away from their game.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn, obviously, because of what Georgia had looked like offensively in the opener, Auburn is thinking that, that this is ripe for the taking. And I'd never really bought into, Auburn going in there and having any success on offense. And they didn't. I mean, as much as they convinced themselves that Bo Nix is a much better quarterback now, and maybe he has improved, I don't know, but it doesn't change the fact they have one returning starter on the offensive line, and Georgia's the best defense in the country. Like that combination just does not go well, and it never will. And it didn't on Saturday night. And Auburn, Bo Nix didn't have time to do much, and they couldn't score because of it. And obviously, Georgia got its running game going. Bennett continues to be efficient, and Georgia looked like what we would have expected them to before the season began. And so I think for Auburn, it was more of a disappointment because they went into the game feeling like they had a good chance to win, and they didn't come close. The other fan base that is probably almost as disappointed as A&M, not because they were expecting to win the game, but they just, at this stage of Jimbo, and I know you and I we throw Jimbo under the bus almost every time I come on your show.
Sure, I love it.
And I mean, and I like the guy. Like I told you many times, I've had a chance to talk to him, and I like him. But you just can't get around the fact that his offenses are not scary, and his defenses, even though I think they clearly have more talent, they look better in their uniforms than they ever have since they joined the SEC. I mean, they look like they can play when you're looking at those guys on defense. But man, they didn't do any better of a job of stopping Alabama than they did back when Johnny Manziel was the quarterback. And so at some point it's got to show up on the field. And the fact that they were not competitive in that game, even after falling down 14-0 and managing to come back and tie the game as quickly as they did, to then just get blown out again. This is a big game for A&M this weekend. Because if they don't beat Florida, and I realize that that's a tall order based on what we've seen so far, but this is the one that if you don't win it, now all of a sudden the fan base is going to start to turn on him. The ones that haven't already done so, and I think they're going to start to. You're going to have much larger numbers of A&M fans saying he's not who we thought he was, and he's not ever going to do what we hoped he'd do.
And I don't see him changing. I mean, he's now over 50 years old. He's won a title. He believes that he's elite. He got the whole pat on the back treatment after that. And then he's got the Saban.
He's kind of like Leach. He's got his way of doing things, and it's worked for him enough that he believes in it, and he's not going to adjust. Unlike, we've talked about many times with Saban. Like, as great as he is and as high of a percentage of games he won, he still was able to recognize when he had to adjust in order to stay on top, and he didn't have too much pride to be willing to do it. And that's the difference between a good coach and a great coach.
I agree. Who knew that Saban would throw the ball around like they are? It's scary what Sark and that offense are doing. Brad Edwards.
I still think he wants to run, Bo. I think with this year's team, he wants. And look,
and I just don't think I don't think Harris is special at all, Brad.
No, he's good, but he's not. I don't know. I think he's more dangerous because of his ability as a receiver. And you wouldn't think that given his size. He's a good receiver, but he's not. He doesn't scare me as a running back if I'm defending him. I mean, even for how big he is, he doesn't run.
He doesn't move
a lot of tackles.
All right, let me throw this out at you, Brad. I've only got 60 seconds, unfortunately. But if you threw Kylan Hill there, and with the talent around, do you understand what he would be in that Sark-driven offense?
Absolutely, because they're going to spread the field because you're scared of their receivers, and it's going to give you more lanes to run.
Yes.
And that's the thing about Harris not being explosive. And I've got to believe Alabama has some backs that are. He's so experienced though, and he's so steady.
Right.
We know though, if they want to run the ball this week, they'll be able to. I think that's become pretty obvious. You can run it on Ole Miss if you want.
Sure. Okay. That wasn't enough time. But Brad Edwards, I didn't even get into Texas and Oklahoma.
That's what I was about to say. First coach,
Big 12.
First team to be looking for a coach. Texas or Texas A&M, right?
Oh man, the Red River rivalry is this weekend, and wow, all right, we may get Brad on another hit or a podcast after the show and drop it in the show later. Brad, thank you, buddy.
All right, see you guys.
See you, man. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road. Also, Went McGee, the mortgage man. He'll shop the best rates for you as you're looking for a hometown house or condo. Went McGee, mortgagemanms.com. The show is also brought to you by Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland for all your collision repair. Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. Don't forget, hit the